My name is Chi-Chao Cheng, and this is my first time presenting at Digital East, so I appreciate the invitation. I work at XAD. It's a 2-year-old startup, venture-backed, and we are a mobile advertising company that focuses around ad network technology and also has elements of demand-side platform as well as supply-side platform. What is really unique about what we do is that we really try to understand the core value of mobility, and that core value to us is location. So, all our customers, Fortune 500 advertisers, as well as small businesses who work with us, they have some sort of a location awareness targeting, location awareness branding that they want to practice. And they come work with us for that. Today, I want to talk to you about sort of the real fast growth that we've been seeing in mobile and the kind of an impact that that's going to make in one of the major tactics of advertising, and that is search. So today, the conversation is not about display advertising. It's primarily about search. I think I really have 3 simple messages. The first thing is I want to make sure that you understand how consumers are behaving differently on mobile devices versus when they spend time on desktops and computers in general. And that difference in behavior leads to a much improved user engagement, if you will, and I want to talk a little bit more about that as we get there. And finally, how do we know that the user engagement is better, and what does that really mean to advertisers, agencies, as well as publishers from a mobile metrics standpoint, and we're going to touch a little bit about that as well. Let's first start with a little bit of stats, and my goal here is not to embarrass anyone, but I want to see a show of hands of anyone who does not have a mobile phone. I knew I wasn't going to embarrass anyone because I'm sure that not a single person in this audience do not possess a mobile phone. Well, guess what? In the United States, 88% of the population have a mobile phone. And so obviously you guys are not representative of the entire population of the United States, but 88% is quite a high number. When you go international, and some of the markets out there like Japan, like UK, like Germany, you're going to see numbers that are actually more impressive than 88%. For example, Japan has close to 96% penetration of mobile phones. So here's another question, and I hope I'm not going to embarrass anyone. How many of you do not have a smartphone? Okay, that's what I thought. Well, that number is a little different when you look at the population in general. About 55% of the US population own a smartphone. And you can understand that. I mean, smartphones typically cost about $50 to $100 more from a device standpoint relative to a feature phone. And the plans, service plans as well as data plans also cost quite a bit. But 55% of penetration that we have in this US population are smartphone users. How many of you have chosen your mobile device, and by mobile device I mean also tablet as well, as your primary device to actually get online? I want to see some hands. How many of you prefer your mobile device as your primary way to get online? Okay, I see some hands, some shy folks out there. Well, 1 out of 3 actually use their mobile device as their primary venue, and that number is actually increasing quite a bit. But what's really important is that, when we look at the data coming from mobile devices, almost 1 out of 5 or 20% of the clicks happening on paid search advertisements are actually coming from mobile devices. And what that really means is that if you actually look at the overall volume and traffic of mobile search, and by mobile search I mean anytime you use a mobile device to search, there's a little box, you type in a search, whether that's searching for a restaurant, whether that's searching for someone, whether that's searching for some sort of a research topic, that is considered mobile search. If you look at the statistics and some of the trends that have been predicted, by the year of 2015, the volume of mobile searches is going to match that of desktops and computers, and beyond that is going to exceed that of desktops and computers. And the growth that we've been seeing in 2011 and currently in 2012 is just amazing. And we believe, as well as many firms out there also believe, that that's really the trend that's going to hold on. So with that, then the question is, what does this really mean for advertisers and agencies and generally speaking, online marketers? Well, what it really means is that more and more people are spending money on mobile search. Okay, so there's a lot of studies out there that say that people spend around 1% of their ad dollars in mobile, and a big chunk of that 1% is in mobile search, but 10% or 15% of people's time is actually being spent on mobile. So there's a huge discrepancy between ad dollars spent versus the time that people actually spend on mobile. And that's why you see mobile display growing a whopping 35% year over year, and mobile paid search growing as high as 52% year over year. These numbers are numbers that we haven't seen since the advent of the web, if you will, 10, 15 years ago. Okay, so we've gone through some numbers, and hopefully by now you know that mobile is a big growth area, and that people are starting to spend not only time and eyeballs, but also ad dollars in it. So what does it really mean for you as a marketer, for example, or as a publisher, or as a ad technology provider? What does that really mean to you in terms of understanding how you can actually realize the full potential of mobile? And I think really is key here is to understand what users are doing when they pick up their mobile devices. So for example, studies have shown that 90% of users who actually have a mobile device actually conducted a local search. And by local search, I mean looking for something that's near you, that's around you. Hey, show me where the sort of the nearest pizzeria is. Show me where the nearest Subway store is, etc. And the reason why you see so many people looking for stuff locally is because they actually have an immediate need. Typically, what people do when they wanted to shop for large things like cars and houses, or plan for their vacations, they sit back, go to their desktop or their tablet, and they basically do a lot of research. They plan ahead. But when you're on a mobile device and you need something, you are going to search, and that's exactly what we found out. 9 out of 10 people have that immediate need. Okay. And really, two stats that I want to dive deep a little bit. One is the fact that when they search, they are searching for something nearby within 5 miles. And the second thing is that about 70% actually want to transact. And what I mean by transact is they actually want to spend money, whether that's buying a service or buying a product or buying some food. They want to do that within the next hour. Let's dive a little deeper into these two numbers that I just mentioned. First is the sense of urgency, all right? If you look at the numbers, people who were surveyed by this study say that, 34% of them say that they actually wanted to do something within an hour. And 30% of them say that they actually wanted to do something within the next minute or immediately. So when you add up 34 to 30%, you get something about 65%. 65% of people have that sense of urgency when they are using the mobile devices to search. Actually, if you actually add 25% to that, even doing something within the day is, in many regards, a sense, of urgency as well. But if you just look at within an hour and within immediately, it's close to 65%. And the proximity data is also extremely interesting. For example, you'd see that almost 58% are looking for stuff that's actually within walking distance as well as driving distance. If you add walking distance, which is 7%, and 58%, which is driving distance, you have close to another 65% of people who are looking for stuff nearby. Okay? So that's really good. Now, there are really two types of smartphone searches out there. And this could be a little subtle for you to understand, but I wanted to try to make that point clear to you. The two types of searches are what we call app search or in-app search, and then browser search. So you may ask, what is browser search? Browser search is very simple. You get your iPhone, you pick, open Safari, the little box to the right-hand side, that little box, that is a browser search. Another example of browser search, if you have an Android phone and you swipe left, there is a Google search bar, that is also a browser search. Now, beyond these two types of searches, the vast majority of searches that you see on these devices are actually in-app search. What's an in-app search? Say you open up Facebook and you search in the Facebook little box. That's an in-app search. Say you go, open up Telenav or Avantar or YellowPages.com. These are applications that you can download from iPhone, from iStore, for example. That is an in-app search. And so when you actually look at the statistics coming from these two types of searches, it is actually pretty evenly distributed. About 50% of people search from apps and 50% search from browsers. And then when you actually look at the app search, it's actually pretty well divided between Android and iPhone as well. But here's the key point. The key point here is that those folks who think that browser search or Google search is ultimately the fastest growing segment, that actually turns out not to be the case. We're starting to see the growth of app searches to be just as competitive as the growth of browser searches, which makes it really interesting because all of a sudden people are searching across these applications and fragmenting the search traffic across them. Well, so there's two types of searches. There's app searches and browser searches. But which one of these two searches actually have more or better user engagement or user time spent? So this is a very interesting study by Nielsen that was just published recently. And that, overall, it shows that people spend close to 2 hours a day on mobile devices, about 120 minutes. But when they break those 2 hours down into in-app versus browser, you'd see that the apps are starting to dominate, which means that people are spending more time with native applications, whether that's on an iPhone or Android, versus the browsers. Now, why is that? Why do you think that people are spending more time on apps? Faster. That's right. That's a great point. Sometimes there's essentially, what you're talking about here is just some measurement challenges. I think the one point that I want to make here, though, is that one of the follow-ups that Nielsen had in this study is that they surveyed users and they found out that users actually like to engage with apps more than they engage with browsers because it has this sort of a zippy feeling. It has this native feeling. They just think that their user experience is actually superior on an application than they are on a browser. And perhaps one day, apps that are written on browsers will catch up and have a better user experience. But by and large, users do prefer to use apps for whatever reason. For example, Facebook is the typical example where people prefer to use a Facebook mobile app than the Facebook's browser interface that's out there. So when people engage a lot with apps and browsers, that's great, and that generates a lot of clicks to search. Now, what I wanted to make a point about here is that for mobile advertising, over the last 5 years, which I think is the real early years of mobile, people really focused around sending ads out there to the users just from a branding standpoint. And if they actually click on the ad, great. Click-through rates are, as you had probably heard from a lot of people, typically very low in mobile, and so people don't even worry about what's going to happen after the click. Well, over the last 2 years, there's been a trend and a shift in how people look at mobile. And it's really not much surprising because that has always been the case on desktop. People care about click-through rate, but they also care about what happens when the person clicks on an ad. When you go to the landing page, which is this next page after the click-through happens, that is what we call a conversion, or that is what we call a secondary action when you actually do something on that page, whether that's filling a form for a mortgage loan, whether that is making a call, whether that is entering a comment. Those actions are actions that marketers care the most, which they didn't care about on mobile because mobile was such a small amount of volume and such a small amount of spend. But today, they care about that a great deal. So when it comes to mobile search, what kinds of secondary actions matter? The things that we have seen work best are what we call click-to-calls or calls. And the reason why I say click-to-call is oftentimes, when you click on a number on mobile device, there's a little confirmation box that shows up that says, do you want to make this call? And so typically what we do is we charge advertisers on that click to call and not necessarily on the completion of the call. Other types of secondary actions are maps and driving directions. You'll be surprised to know that a lot of advertisers would pay a lot of money when they know that the user actually clicked on the maps button to know where your store is located, or even better, when they're using turn-by-turn directions to try to get to your store. They pay big bucks for that as well. And finally, social feedback is something that they care greatly, especially when they click on the like button on the landing page. It's essentially user indicating that they like your business. So secondary actions are very important for mobile search. But the big challenge that we have in the industry today, a challenge that a company like AxAd, like mine, is really trying to solve, is to make sure that we can measure these secondary actions, that these secondary actions are instrumented properly on these pages so that we can send reports, reliable reports, high-fidelity reports to advertisers so they understand the ROI that they're getting from their money. Okay, good. So I told you about the fact that a lot of people are searching on mobile devices, and there are two types of searches. There's app search and browser search. I also told you about the fact that, hey, click-through matters, but not only click-through matters, secondary action rates matter. So what are the numbers that you're now seeing, that we are seeing as practitioners of mobile advertising, especially mobile search advertising? What are we seeing out there? Well, click-through rates for search are actually quite strong. We're seeing somewhere between 5% to 8% click-through rates in search. When you use an application, which is the point that I was making before, where applications seem to be more engaging, click-through rate can be as high as 8%. When you're using browser, for whatever reason, the measurements are saying that it's somewhere between 5%. To me, there's a lot of noise in these measurements. I would say safely somewhere between 5 to 8. But let's take one of the secondary actions that people care the most, call rates, for example. Those call rates are quite high, somewhere between 30 to 40%, depending on whether you're using an application or mobile or a browser. And that reflects the immediacy, the sense of urgency that I spoke to you guys about, which is the fact that they need something right now, and therefore they are willing to pick up the phone and make that call so that they can connect to the market. Yeah, call rates are important, but it's not just calls. As I said, more and more people care about maps and driving directions. And if you actually look at the kinds of secondary actions that in aggregate we, AxAd, have been able to deliver to our customers, close to 60% of them are calls or click-to-calls, but a big number, almost 35%, is actually maps and driving directions. There's others such as social interactions and so forth, which is interesting that we're able to get some decent number, but 3% is still on the low side. So maps and directions is becoming very popular secondary action for marketers in general, especially small businesses that want to drive foot traffic into their stores. So, in summary, I think that it's very important for you to understand that when people use mobile search, that they have the sense of immediacy, they have the sense of proximity, that they really want to try to solve their last mile problem. And this has always been a challenge for desktops and computers, and I'm very happy to see that after 10 or 15 years in the industry, we're starting to see that last mile being closed by the mobile devices. The other thing that's really important to know is that there are really two types of smartphone searches, apps and browsers, and more importantly, click-through rates as well as secondary action rates are the right things for you to start looking at, and knowing that depending on where the search is coming from, whether it's from an app or whether it's from a browser, you're going to see variations in your click-through rates and your secondary action rates. And the final point that I want to make here is that as you think through your mobile search marketing plans or your campaign planning, just make sure that you understand the various types of traffic sources, from tablets to apps to browsers. Understand the types of publishers, whether that's Google or Telenav or Yellow Pages, whatever that is, and make sure that you are measuring, or that you work with a company that knows how to measure click-through rates really well, and more importantly, secondary action rates, so that you can price that traffic and therefore make your campaign more effective and better ROI. Okay? That's all I have. Again, my name is Chi-Chiao Chang, and that's my contact info. If you need any other additional information, have any questions, please let me know. Thanks.